Good morning, everybody. It is here. The ACE framework project is up and running. And so today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the repo, tell you about the project, where we're at, how you can participate, and the roadmap from here. So the first thing that you'll see when you go to the ACE framework, it's Dave Schaap / ACE framework, is the repo is relatively small right now. We don't have any examples. I've got the core team together, and we are brainstorming. We're meeting soon to come up with some technical milestones, some designs, and other organizational things. The README is relatively short and straightforward. This is more of a guide to the rest of the repo. So I've got a link directly to the framework itself here. I've got some information about how to participate. There's a few resources here, which we'll get into. Then, of course, the overarching architecture of the ACE framework. And then finally, some projects. So this is where we'll start to dive in. So if you're not familiar with the ACE framework, it stands for Autonomous Cognitive Entity. And basically what this is, it is a cognitive architecture, a software architecture that is meant to work with LLMs, and then when they're available, multimodal models that will allow us to create fully autonomous entities such as personal assistants or companions, game world NPCs, autonomous employees, or embodied robots. So those are the four overarching categories of ways that the ACE framework can be implemented. And so the team that I've built, we've all agreed that we're going to start with the personal assistant and or companion first. So basically, this is going to be a personal executive assistant that is capable of, one, thinking entirely autonomously to meet your needs without necessarily waiting for you to give any instructions. So this is what we mean when I say fully autonomous, because there's a lot of times that I'll say like, oh yeah, this is to create autonomous entities. And they're like, well, what do you mean by autonomy? Just think like robot. Think, the Nestor Class 5 from iRobot. Think about Commander Data from Star Trek. Think about all these, think about Samantha from the movie Her, which I just rewatched, which, man, that movie hits different today. 10 years ago, when Her came out with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, it was all speculation. Now it's being realized. So that movie really hits different. Anyways, point being is the idea here is to create machines that can think on their own, that can set their own goals and objectives, but to do so in a structured way that basically means that it won't hurt you or become toxic or dangerous or destructive. So those are the four overarching categories that we're going to be pursuing within this project. Now, let me give you a tour of the rest of the repo. So right at the base layer, I've got the ACE framework here. So the ACE framework, this is the deep dive into all of the layers with diagrams, examples, and so on. This was the first thing that I introduced, so you're probably familiar with that. The README, that's the page that we're on here. I've added an agile chart. So basically this is showing, one, how we're organizing the project as well as the roadmap. So if you're not familiar with agile, agile is a software development paradigm that focuses on small teams and rapid improvement. So what we're starting with is an MVP, which means minimum viable product, or POC, which is proof of concept. And so the very first thing that the team and I are going to be building is just like the simplest, most cut down version that says, hey, it works. That's the goal here. So the acceptance criteria that I've established for the MVP is it'll be Python. So it'll either be entirely Python or mostly Python, meaning that it'll be more accessible to people. It needs to be hackable, meaning it's going to be built in such a way that it is easier to copy, paste, edit, reconfigure, so on and so forth. Because again, the whole point of the MVP is just to show that it works and also make it more accessible to everyone else. Simple and easy. Again, we want this to be as brain dead simple as possible to set up and start playing with. Because again, the idea is this is just to demonstrate functionality, to demonstrate that it actually works, that it's not just theory. And so to that, one thing that I want to say very quickly is that all the components of the ACE framework have all been done. But what I'm doing is I'm bringing it all together. So as anyone who has built anything that is large and complicated knows that all the pieces might work independently, but plugging them into each other, that can be the hard part. Acceptance criteria number 4 is that there has to be some kind of visual component, meaning that you can see it working or interact with it in a visual way, rather than just seeing code scrolling across the screen. And then finally, the 5th acceptance criteria is that it must be a full implementation of all 6 layers and both buses of the ACE framework. And if you're new to this and you're not sure of what I'm talking about when I say layers and buses, you can take a quick look at the architectural diagram here. So there are 6 layers. They're hierarchical layers, which basically is an order of operations in terms of what handles what aspect. And then there's a northbound bus, which is bringing telemetry into the environment. And then there's the southbound bus, which is the control scheme. So the MVP must implement all 8 of those components. Not necessarily, we're not necessarily focusing on input and output yet. The primary thing is that we need to create a thinking machine, something that is forming structured thoughts and plans and so on. Okay, so that is the Agile. Here's the contributing document. So basically, there's a few ways to contribute. We've got the discussions tab, which I'll show you in just a second. There's also my Discord and Patreon community. So if you want a private community, I do have an ACE framework tab set up in that community. Just if anyone wants to jump in, talk about it. Also, I've had a few people reach out who want to consult on it because obviously I am not the only person doing autonomous agents and so on and so forth. And so several of my clients, particularly my newer clients, have reached out and they want me to provide coaching or consultation on their architectures, and I'm happy to do so. So that's another way to get involved. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that the core team, the initial team, we do have that set up. However, there is a huge amount of interest in this project. And so part of what I'm doing on the Agile chart over here is defining how we're going to have this open source distributed project moving forward. So the core team will consist of myself and the core team that I've already built. And then essentially what I'll recommend, obviously I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but for all the people that are reaching out that have particular implementations that they want to do, the idea is that I'll recommend that you build an individual Scrum team, which is a team that is capped at 7 people maximum, and that you start with a lead developer. So the lead developer is the one who's going to kind of drive the vision and focus on making sure that everything happens. But then within the core team, we'll have myself as the product owner, and then we'll also have probably one or more Scrum Masters. I've already had several people volunteer to serve as Scrum Masters. And so if you're not familiar with a Scrum Master, pretty much the role of the Scrum Master is the master of ceremony, the one who understands the process of Agile development. And so they basically like the train conductor that helps keep all the developers on track within a team. And it's basically what a Scrum Master does is we'll sit in with the Scrum team of developers, of 7 developers, maximum 7 developers. It doesn't have to be 7. The Scrum Master will sit in and provide guidance of like, okay, here's how you figure out what to do first. Here's how you conduct the meetings, so on and so forth. And so the idea here is that once we have the core team set up, those of us on the core team will be available to other folks who have who basically want a little bit of help and guidance implementing an open source implementation of ACE, one of the 4 kinds that we just talked about. And the idea is that as a community, we will learn how to some best practices around how to implement this, and we'll be able to share. But the idea is that this repository will be the primary nexus of learning how to deploy these autonomous cognitive entities. So that's the Agile and contributing documents. I definitely recommend you take a look at those. And then finally, there's a resources document. So here I captured a list of books at the top. So there's cognition, psychology, and neuroscience. And then there's several concepts and frameworks, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and all the other kind of models that went into the inspiration behind ACE. So this is basically like a very, very short citation page. And then finally, I'll be accumulating YouTube videos that demonstrate the ACE framework, whether it's projects or breakdowns or whatever. So there's mine, and then Synaptic Labs already produced a much shorter kind of introduction to the ACE framework. So thank you guys for doing that. Oh, and they did that completely without like my permission or anything. It's open source. This is all under the MIT license. And then finally, the big thing that everyone has been waiting for is the publication. So the paper is here. It's not yet up on archive, but I was given permission by the professor to go ahead and announce it. So this is the actual publication that I partnered with Clemson University. They actually reached out to me because their work is very parallel to what I'm doing. So I want to send a huge thank you to Carlos Manuel and Wang Fan over at the Human AI Empowerment Lab at Clemson University. So the paper is here. It's ready. You can download it. It is incredibly well cited. I think we have over 150 citations. So we it's not we didn't make this up, but there is a tremendous amount to unpack here. So obviously, I'm not going to read all 37 pages of the paper to you, but if you work through this scientific paper, you'll understand the psychology, the philosophy, the ethics, and a lot of the other science underpinning the ACE framework. So it is there. It is ready. This is the big announcement. And then I've also got a few other papers in the publications page. These are not all from me. That's the only one that I participated in. But these are the most relevant papers that I have found. So I've got principle-driven self-alignment with minimal human supervision. So basically, this kind of thing, this paper is included because it comes from Carnegie Mellon and MIT IBM Watson AI Lab. So these are some serious folks. But the idea here is to show that that you can have principle-driven self-alignment. So this will be specifically germane to the aspirational layer and the agent model layer. So layer 1 and layer 3, in order to understand how to keep these things on track autonomously. Another publication is the Koala paper that I mentioned in a recent video. So this came out of Princeton, and actually the professor, Carlos, who reached out to me, he's friends with these guys over at Princeton. So he collaborates with them. We're all operating in the same space. The RAIN paper just came out. So this is again about self-alignment that demonstrates prompting strategies for self-alignment even without fine-tuning. So again, definitely directly relevant to the ACE framework. And then I already showed you the ACE paper. And then an older one is Jan LeCun's paper about the AMI, his architecture. I'm not particularly a fan of this architecture, which I've mentioned before, so I'm not going to get into that again. But I figured it would be good to have here just so that, by virtue of contrast. And even though I don't necessarily agree with this, it's still good to see like what the state of the industry is. Okay, cool. So that is a full tour of the repository here. The other part of the whole repo is the discussions tab. So this is the main tab that I want to end on, which is, you can see we've already had some robust discussion. We've got people bringing up safety concerns. We've got people trying to understand what it would look like, all kinds of thoughts. So this is basically an open invitation. If you just want to learn about it, like if you have like dumb questions or noob questions, come to the Q&A section, and we'll be sure. And it's not just me; it's other members of the team are jumping in and answering questions. So whether it's you've got questions, whether you want to share, so the show and tell section, if you've got an implementation you want to share or a demonstration, feel free to post it here. The whole idea, again, is that the ACE framework repository is going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, the nexus of development for this framework. And then eventually, like again, it's fully open source. You probably remember from past projects, I don't really have a desire to monetize this or keep control of it. The entire purpose here is to teach and disseminate this information and make it accessible as possible to everyone. So that is where we're at. Thanks for watching. This is it. Jump in. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to collaborate. I've had quite a few other researchers want to collaborate on similar and parallel projects, specifically germane to chatbots. I've also been collaborating with people in various governments around the world to talk about AI and AI narratives. as well as how to generate buy-in. Several of my recent clients and friends and connections, they are building AI startups that interface with the government. So this is another area of interest that I have, because obviously, like, you can have the best tools in the world, but if the government isn't using it, or the government isn't aware of how to use it correctly, it kind of doesn't matter for the rest of us. Obviously, business and government are different, but one of my missions is to bring everyone to the table. That means independent people, that means businesses, that means governments, because, if we're all on the same page, we're all going to end up in a much better place. So, thanks for watching. I'm going to be posting a little bit less. I'm moving over to Medium just because I have so much content that I want to produce. And on that note, I'm actually also building a video team. Then this is not a request to join. The team is already built, and we're just kind of dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So my production quality is about to go up, and I will probably also have a co-host here soon. So we're gonna focus on more interviews. We're going to focus on more of these open source projects. We're going to focus more on education and tutorials. But again, the key thing is I'm going to have more help, because basically I've been completely inundated by the sheer volume of stuff that I want to do and that I cannot do on myself. And I finally got over myself and said, you know what? Let me talk to some of these guys who are offering to help, and let's get this going. Anyways, I'm rambling now. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. You know the drill. But let's get this work done. Let's build some autonomous machines. Let's build some real-life Cortanas and Samanthas and whatever else. And let's make the world a really cool future where we have these fully autonomous machines that can help us and make our lives better. And ideally not kill us, but wish in one hand. All right, I'm done. Later.